Well, as many of us have found, of course, we have the dreaded winter bills are coming now as we come into the end of January with possibly some overspending on the festive period. And here to help us with some practical advice is the founder of fairmoney.com, Dr. Roger Gewolb. Good morning, Roger. How are you?
Oh, good morning, Graham. Very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm counting up the cost of Christmas.
Yes, I know.
As we all are.
Always this time of year. It's really terrible.
Indeed. Some of our listeners may not have listened to you before, Roger, and it's a new experience for them. Perhaps you could give us just a little bit of a background and tell me who you are and what is it that you do?
Well, you probably can't tell that I have an accent, but I've been here for many decades, working in the city and mainly specializing in personal consumer finance.
Right.
Over the years, I founded a business or two which dealt with credit-challenged people when there weren't any companies that would do business with them.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've sort of become a bit of an expert on the demographic of financially challenged Britons.
Yes.
And I'm a bit of a consumer champion and
Good.
Something of a media pundit.
Well, that's bound to make you very popular.
Well, I'm always fighting to save people money.
Well, we're all for that.
You just started talking about something that I've been on the radio a fair bit about lately, which is, for goodness sake, could we please have the VAT, the national insurance increase that is planned scrapped, because we've just had a £13 billion windfall to the government in that the borrowing requirement has reduced by that amount.
Yes.
That amount of money is exactly equal to the levy from the 1.25% increase on national insurance for all of us to pay for the pandemic, in so many words. So since we've got the money, we can pay for the pandemic and we don't need that.
Somehow I can't see the government going for that, Roger.
Well, Mr. Sunak has already refused it. He's being criticized by other MPs and some mostly right-wing groups, saying, why are you squeezing us more when we have a 56% energy cost rise coming?
Which is hurting so many people.
It's just terrible. But Mr. Sunak's not listening. I think the Prime Minister is probably sympathetic, but he's not in a position right now to get into a fight with his Chancellor. So.
No, absolutely. And of course, this is all on top of the huge bills that we have, presumably from the festive period and for January. Is it solely down to our overspending why we're in difficulty, particularly in January? Is it just because of a Christmas and the New Year, Roger, or are there other factors as well?
No, every year I seem to be on a multitude of mainly BBC regional radio stations talking about January bills. It's an endemic problem every year, but this year it's particularly acute because everything costs so much more. And after one Christmas ruined, it would appear from the statistics and the research that Britons just weren't going to have another Christmas absolutely squashed. So they went out and spent on luxury items and champagne and turkey.
Yes.
If you could really get the things. And now the bills have come home, and the bills are a great deal more than they were any previous Christmas.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you. My next question was with regards to the impact of COVID on our finances. So you're saying particularly this time around, because of COVID and being squashed before and wanting possibly to celebrate, push the boat out a little bit further, this particular Christmas and January has become almightily difficult. Is that the reasoning behind it?
Totally, with the one addition that you didn't mention, with respect, which is that you're sitting at home with nothing to do. So,
yes.
Buy something to eat, drink, and amuse yourself. I mean, Amazon must have made a fortune because it's eat, drink, and buy nice things.
And be merry, and it's a way of making ourselves feel good. I mean, is it not just human nature, Roger?
Totally, and perfectly justifiable. I mean, I think it would be unnatural not to feel that way and not to do that.
Yes,
but you do. I'm so sorry.
No, please continue.
Well, you do, as you just said, get yourself into some deep trouble.
Yeah, which we've all done. And let's face it. So, COVID, January, Christmas, wanting to feel better, being squashed last year. What are the other money issues of today, Roger?
I think the biggest money issue today is probably the temptation to overspend and get into debt. And I think that is probably driven, Graham, 100 times more than anything else by the buy now, pay later culture.
Yeah, which is very expensive.
No, not at all. Not at all.
In what ways are not expensive?
Buy now, pay later, or BNPL as they call it, started only a few years ago, and it is a response, a reaction to the piggy credit card companies, the greedy credit card companies that in an era where we get 0.00001% or so interest on our bank deposits,
yes,
have the incredible effrontery to charge 15 to 30% and more on credit cards. And I don't mean credit cards for people with debt problems. I mean credit cards for people who are, AAA rated credits. Some cards, are 15. And it's ridiculous. I mean, you can probably borrow money at your bank on an overdraft at single digits these days, and yet credit cards are from the same, through the same bank, are charging you 3, 4, 5 times as much.
But are we then down to human nature and it's just convenience, Roger? And that's part of the trap that we fall into, in which you could argue maybe the banks are fully aware of and doing on purpose.
Of course they are. And of course it's human nature, but you need to buy the food and the goodies and the TV and the whatever, So that's why you use the credit card. Now, BNPL came along and said, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just make a charge to the merchant, just as the credit cards do, because they get it both sides.
Yes.
And let's not charge customers any interest, and we'll give them 30 days credit, just like the credit cards. Now, that 30 days credit has now been extended in some cases to 60 to 90, and I'm sure that as transaction volumes rise, it'll be extended further, that they will make enough money, the BNPL companies, from what they charge the merchant, because they're increasing their sales volumes dramatically. That's what's made them take off. So if I'm a retailer, if I'm a merchant, and I can sell 30% more goods through this mechanism, I'm very happy to pay a bigger fee to the BNPL company. The BNPL company turns around, charges the customer what the product costs, no interest at all, and they're in competition with the credit cards.
Well, is that not a win then for the consumer, Roger?
It's a total win for the consumer, and it's so popular that it's taken off like nothing. It's also, Graham, completely unregulated, because if you think about it, they're not extending credit. They're not charging any interest.
Yes, but then doesn't that just delay the problem for us, and that we'll buy some big purchases in January because whether we need them or not. That's not my point. We'll buy them in January, and we'll get 3 months. It's interest free, and then the bill will come in later in the year, and then suddenly 3 months later down the road, we're no better off because suddenly we've got these big bills.
No, you're worse off because you bought a whole bunch of stuff that you couldn't actually afford, possibly.
Yep.
This is what's making the regulators crazy. They're rushing to get some legislation in to control and regulate this market.
Okay.
The biggest player, the Swedish company Klarna, Klarna, has just announced, and it's already got a waiting list of 400,000 people who want to subscribe to it to have a credit card. So that you now not only can do this online, but you can walk into a store and do the same thing.
Right. Okay.
Now,
Interesting.
Why the credit card companies who will of course not charge you interest if you pay your credit card bill in the first 30 days, why they won't drop their rates to something reasonable is just insane. But that's the market that has taken off like nobody can imagine. And that, in answer to your question, is the biggest threat today, that people, especially young people, they say, are getting into massive debt on these BNPL deals because the BNPL market is expanding like topsy.
So
and quite rightly, I'm very sympathetic to it because, I mean, do you want to use your credit card and pay, 20% interest? Why?
Well, I must admit, I was watching some late night TV, a bit of a confession for you, and saw one of these mattress offers. And I think, actually, I'm in the market for a new mattress, and I would rather buy a more expensive mattress because it's something that you're going to use, hopefully, for a long period of time. Getting a good night's sleep is very important. So what is the sense of buying a cheap mattress when you could buy a more expensive one? And I was fairly tempted to pick up the phone because it was actually quite a large purchase. But they had the offer on of the buy now, pay later trial and all the rest of it, where, I was delaying the payment for 6 months. So that actually was quite appealing to me. But I suppose that does draw many people into a false sense of security when it comes to their finances.
I know, and then your wife says, look, I'm not going to buy a mattress on the telly or a computer, for goodness sake. I want to go into the store and sit on it. Well, I know they'll deliver it and let me sleep on it for a month, and if I don't like it, send it back, but I don't want to do that either. Therefore, Klarna says, here, have a credit card. Go to the store and go lie on the mattress.
Yes. Okay. And
very clever.
It is very clever, yes. And in terms of regulation, you were saying that, this is way overdue, and part of the boom for buy now, pay later is because it's not regulated. What changes do you think are likely to come into place then with new regulation with regard to buy now, pay later?
Terrific question. I think that the first thing is that the regulators need to examine what are they actually charging the merchants. And, of course, the big question that amazingly, in all the press and publicity that I have seen on this over however many months, nobody's asked the question is, are the merchants passing that on to the consumers in the price?
Well, you're back to the old days of interest-free credit, where the argument was, yes, it's interest-free credit, but you could probably buy this cheaper somewhere else.
Yep.
I suppose in today's marketplace, with the wonders of the internet, it's so easy to go on to competitor sites and see, what prices are available. I mean, I cast back to the big Friday sales just before Christmas, and be careful of the saving. Go and see what the original price is and available now from anywhere else. So has it been? Is it widely felt that retailers are charging more to try and recoup some of the cost of buy now, pay later?
Well, as I say, it amazingly hasn't been mentioned in anything I've seen in the media that anybody has asked or received an answer to that question. Whether they are or not, I don't know. You make a valid point when you say that it's harder to do that, pad the price in an era when we can compare prices on the internet. However, as I said in a TV program not long ago, which the Consumer Magazine did a survey some time ago about Black Friday, and found that 90, and I said 90, not
wow.
90% of Black Friday deals were fake.
Yeah.
They tracked back, and the price on Black Friday was the same as it was, or pretty close, 6 months ago.
So it wasn't a saving at all. You weren't saving any money. You'd just been caught in the whole marketing experience and feeling good because you think on paper you saved cash, where in reality you hadn't, Roger.
It was a rip-off,
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, well, I was putting out lots of warnings at that time saying, forget the saving. Is it value for money for what you're paying now? I wanted to touch base with you with regards to loans, and I know that's very close to your heart with your company at fairmoney.com. If we then transfer the attention to the loan market and what's out there for the consumers, do you see that as a much more level playing field, or do you have areas of concern there as well?
It's a much more level playing field because it's been with us for many decades, and it's very, very highly regulated. I always say that it's probably more regulated than anything except maybe medicine or rocket science. It's very regulated, and people are fairly well protected. The enforcement is not as strong as it could be. That's a British understatement, but it's pretty regulated, and there's no real problems in that area from the point of view of the operators. I think the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, has done a pretty good job of keeping most lenders in line with their regulation and supervision. I think the big problem in the lending market is availability for consumers, because unless you are a first-class credit, unless you've got a really good credit record, if you have any kind of blemish, the market if people with a good credit record, perfect credit record, we call that prime.
Yes.
If you're near prime, or the next category, which is non-prime, or you're in the deep stuff, which is subprime, you're going to find a harder time than ever to find anybody who'll lend you any money, because a lot of these companies have gone out of business, have disappeared, and a lot of lenders across the board, even prime lenders, stopped lending last year during the pandemic. The reason for that is, how can you access a loan to somebody who, A, is on furlough and may not be taken back, B, whose company may go broke, C,
Yep.
who might be fired whilst the company is still good once the furlough's over.
But in terms of if you're an average person, or let's say below average in terms of credit rating, so we're not talking about same day loans here, but somebody who's working, a young family, obviously they're being stressed financially. Do you feel that they're getting a fair rap in terms of the interest rate being matched fairly to their credit rating and their credit status and their ability to repay, Roger? Or are they being, how can I word this? Well, I won't word it politely, being stiffed.
I think there's one answer to that, and many answers. It depends on the lender. Some lenders are giving them a fair whack. Now, if you have somebody with serious credit problems, there's two criteria that have been around since, World War II, which is, one, do they have the ability to repay, and two, do they have the desire to repay? There are a lot of people that take out loans that have no intention of repaying them. So if you're in a market in an area of the country with people that probably don't worry too much about repaying loans or something like that, you're going to have to charge high interest rates because you're going to have a huge amount of bad debts.
To cover that, yeah. So we all suffer then.
Yeah, so you absolutely, we subsidize them, yes. So of course, people with a prime credit rating aren't going to go to that lender, so he's not going to subsidize anyone. But it depends lender by lender whether you're getting stiffed or not. But I have to say, the FCA, although they're a bit slow and have let some big sharks swim by and missed them, and many, many people have gone broke or been hurt by it. But in general, I would say, 80, 90% of the time, they keep the bad guys in line.
Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear. Roger, we're almost out of time, I'm afraid. Just one final question for you briefly, if I can. Obviously, the last 18 months have been very challenging, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens economy-wise, quite apart from COVID, and whether we are truly out of that for the rest of 2022. What do you see as the biggest concerns for you in your role as advocating fair play for consumers with regards to finance? What should we be? What would be your advice in terms of, for the year 2022, be careful with blank?
Don't borrow money or incur debt that you don't really need, as tempting as it is. I mean, I'm as much a victim of this as anybody. It's just so easy to buy things. I'm on Amazon all the time, £5 here, £8.99 there.
It's so easy to do, isn't it?
And then I look at the end of the week and I go, well, come on, I just bought a bunch of small little things that are frankly, very useful. Stuff for my computer. I'm a bit of a computer nut. I like it. And then, I look at the total amount I bought and said, oh my God, I wouldn't have gone into PC World, if I can use a commercial name.
That's fine, yeah.
I wouldn't have gone into PC World and spent that, would I? So, I mean, it's addictive. It's a narcotic.
So we've got to be careful of the convenience. As you say, if you're having to physically go out to a shop, you're less likely to do that, especially in the situation at the moment. But because of the online market and the simplicity, and it's so easy, that's part of the reason where we need to be more disciplined, because we do just let our spending get out of hand and we go off and buy lots of small things, and then when you add it up, it actually could be quite a lot of money.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's always addictive. It's always difficult at Christmas time. But we have a new phenomenon, wafting through the air now, which is this drug that just sucks you into just click, 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 and have what you want in a second. And now you don't even have to pay for it. Worry about it in a few months' time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's very good advice. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Roger. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps we'll come back to you later in the year and see financially how 2022 has panned out.
If any of your listeners have any specific questions, they can send us an email at info@gewolb.tv.
Perfect. Do you want us just to repeat that address?
Yeah, info @gewolb.tv.
Perfect. Dr. Roger Gewolb, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.